Thank you, Nina. Welcome, everyone. We're just going to give folks about 4 more minutes to get into the webinar, and then we'll go ahead and start our presentation promptly at 3:35. So thanks for joining, and we've got about 4 minutes before we get started. All right, let's just give it another minute and then we'll get started. All right, it is 3:35. I think we should go ahead and get this meeting going. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our June LEEP program meeting. We apologize for the snafu and last week and me not understanding how to count to the 3rd week in June. So here we are in the 4th week of June. We'll get back on schedule for July. And with us today, well, first of all, I'm Kristen Nevedal. I'm the department director for the Mendocino Cannabis Department. With us today, we have Nina Holloway, who is assisting us with all things technical. William Riley, our program administrator, has joined us today as well. And we have Paula Groves, who runs the Elevate Impact Mendocino group, which we're thankful for to assist us with administering this program. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn it over to Paula, if you don't mind, Paula, and let you kick off the presentation, and then just feel free to hand it back to William or I when you are ready.
Sure. So I want to make sure I can see the slides. Great. Thank you everyone for joining us. This is the monthly LEEP program meeting, which is where we try to update you on the most recent program information, as well as funding statistics on the program, any changes or updates that there are to the program. But really, this gives you an opportunity to ask any questions, and hopefully we can answer any questions about any aspect of the program. We also welcome any suggestions and recommendations for improvements to the program. So hopefully this allows you to get your concerns heard and addressed and help us move the program forward and take it to a higher level. Thank you, Kristen.
All right, let's see if we can get to the next slide. There you go. William, you want to take this slide?
Yeah, if I can figure out how to unmute. So everybody, we are in LEEP funding right now. We are currently in a really bizarre area where we're in round 1, round 2, and round 3 funding is accessible to us. And so all of those dollar amounts are actualized by the county, they're available, but we are spending them through going through round 1, then round 2, then round 3, in order to make sure that we expend all of what we have in round 1 funding. And so the award for round 1 funding, as we all know, is $2.2 million. The time frame was originally May 15th, 2020 to May 15th, 2021. It got amended through an amendment from the state, and then they gave us a second amendment to bring it all the way to August 31st to ensure that we can get those funds out. And then after we expend our funding for round 1, which as we move through, we feel really confident in, we'll be in round 2, which was significantly less. It was awarded in the midst of the COVID pandemic, so that's why we genuinely believe that it was significantly less, because government accountability at that time was very concerned about the future. And then we got to round 3. Round 3 was applied for in December, and we secured it, doing the best out of all of our applications so far. And we got the check on May 9th, with the language being that the grant funds are available from 1 year from when you get the check. And so since they dated it May 9th, it's May 9th, 2020 to May 9th, 2023.
All right, you want me to take this one? You want to keep going, William? Okay. Really, the goal of this slide is to kind of show how much money we have to work with in this program currently, right? Because as we're approving grants and we're expanding the waiver program, we've heard concerns that we're going to run out of money. And I just, William and I, staff here at MCD, we don't really think that that's where we're at. So we wanted to put together a little more robust funding information for this meeting. And then also try to help folks understand that the waiver program, the way the state does the budgeting, there's some overlap. There's not really a waiver line item in the budget, so to speak. So what we have here is a breakdown of how much money has been set aside in each round of funding for direct grants and workforce development. So in round 1, it's almost 1.1 million, just shy 1.1 million. In round 2, which William just mentioned was a much smaller award than rounds 1 and 3, there's $565,820 for direct grants and workforce development. And round 3, there's a little over 1.9 million for direct grants and workforce development. So combined, right now, we're working out of a collective pool, so to speak, of just over $3.5 million for direct grants and workforce development. Now, the waiver program really is kind of the same pool, but we're separating it out here. The way the budget works from the state is they lump together in a line item dollar amounts that can be used by the local jurisdiction for local permitting and state permitting and licensing requirements. So the waiver program is local requirements, right? So everyone will talk a little more about what's included in the waiver program, but for the sake of local permitting And then state licensing and permit fees, and we've talked about this a lot, that state licensing and permit fees have to go into your direct grant. The money for those type of activities in the first round was $700,000 is what the state awarded us for that type of funding opportunity. And the second round, it was $100,000. And the third round was $633,603, which means we have a combined funding pool for waivers and state licensing and permit fees that you might apply for in your direct grant. That combined funding opportunity right now is at 1.4 million and change. And then we have the technical assistance categories. Round one, the state awarded the county $242,570 for technical assistance. Round two was $83,227 for technical assistance. And round three is $294,300 for technical assistance, for a grand total currently of $602,097 in technical assistance availability. And then we have, the cost associated with us running this program. So not just the county, but also our contract administrators. So round one, the state set aside in the budget $224,570 for administrative services. Round two came to $83,227, which is 10% of the sum here for each of those pools. And then round three, the state did it a little bit differently, right? So round three does not come to a full 10%. We're closer to 4.5% on this. And round three allows us $115,311 to administer this program, for a grand total of $423,108 in administrative services. That allows us to cover staff costs and administrative contractor costs. Diving into the minutia here a little bit, right? If we talk about the direct grant program specifically, we're showing the approval rates, right, from month to month here, and what the dollar amounts are. So March was really the biggest month where we had the most approvals, totaling $997,435.63 worth of approved grants. And we're still in the same position where we've only issued 5 checks out of these approvals. We're hoping to break that logjam really soon. In April, we approved 8 grants. Those 8 grants totaled up to around $397,597. And in May, we approved 6 grants to the tune of $302,402 and change. So to date, we have approved $1,747,435.63 in direct grants, which with all 3 rounds combined, we currently have $1,815,750.37 remaining in our direct grant budget, right? Now, again, remember that when we talk about the waiver program, the dollar amounts in the waiver program also, some of them might go into direct grants because the waiver pool includes state licensing and permitting expenses, right? So right now, if we talk about just waivers that we've awarded through our waiver program, and again, that's going to be for local permit fees and for local business taxes, this is what the dollars look like. There's $1,433,606 in round 1, 2, and 3 funds that we can use for waivers. And as of May 17th, as of May 17th, oh shoot, I'm sorry. As of May 17th, we had issued or awarded 77 waivers. to the tune of $63,067.34. And then each month we're showing additional waivers here. So we really had a big jump between May 17th and May 23rd. Between May 17th and May 23rd, we issued 56 waivers to the tune of $115,888.42. And a lot of this was in taxes, right? Folks using waivers to pay for their true-ups before the end of May. And then in June, like when we look at June 8th, between May 23rd and June 8th, we issued 30 more waivers to the tune of almost $60,000. And between June 8th and today, we've approved another 3 waivers, totaling slightly over $21,000. Now, to date, the LEEP program has awarded 166 waivers, totaling $259,858.31, meaning that with all 3 rounds of funding combined, we have $1,173,747.69 in that waiver and state licensing and permitting fee pool. Okay, so still have a ways to go here. We're pretty excited this program is moving forward nicely. And we're going to talk even a little more detail. So we'll be done with waivers in just a moment as far as the financials are concerned, I promise. But just getting our heads wrapped around where we're at a little bit, just to see where those monies are going. We can see that out of that $259,858.31, $2,600 and some change was spent on waivers for scale certifications with the Department of Agriculture. We issued 21 waivers for scale certifications with the Department of Agriculture. And to date, we have issued 41 waivers to planning and building services for building permits, and some demo permits and some extensions and whatnot, but building permit related waivers, there's been 41 of them to the tune of $18,886.29. Treasurer Tax Collector's Office, these are our tax waivers. 97 tax waivers have been issued to assist LEEP eligible applicants in their taxes, totaling $225,251.49. We've issued 19 fee waivers for MCD fees, Cannabis Department fees, to the tune of $13,120.13. Again, the waivers program has spent so far 178 waivers that we've issued to the tune of $259,858.31, meaning we still have $1,173,747.69 in our budget allocation for waivers and state licensing and permit fees. So a little confusing how the budget works, but trying to be as transparent as possible here so folks can ask questions if you have them. And speaking of questions, before I go on, I do want to remind folks that we will have time for Q&A, and that there is the ability for you to type in your questions if you're on the Zoom platform. You can use the Q&A feature at any time during this presentation to enter your question. You just click on the icon. It's a little chat box. It says Q&A under it. It's generally either at the bottom of your screen or the top of your screen. And feel free to click on that. It will open up a separate panel for you where you can go ahead and type in your questions. When you type in your question and submit it, it comes to our panelists. So myself, William, Paula, and Nina would see those questions. And we'll do our best at the end to answer any questions in the Q&A, as well as to offer an opportunity for verbal questions to be asked and responded to. There is a raise hand feature in the same toolbar. So Paul and Susan found the raise hand feature. So the raise hand feature just looks like the palm of a hand. And so clicking on that will raise your hand. And when we get to public comment, we'll utilize folks, we'll call on folks who have raised their hand. So if you do want to make a verbal comment, you will need to raise your hand. And if you're on a phone and you're not on the Zoom app, you can raise your hand by pressing *9. So we'll remind you of this later, and I apologize for forgetting to mention it in the beginning of the presentation. So let's talk briefly about what happens in the next solicitation opportunity, right? So the department does intend to apply again for a 4th round of funding. We expect that solicitation period to open October, November-ish, just like it did last year. And there are some new requirements. So we actually have to spend down 80% of round 1 and round 2 to qualify to apply for another round of funding from the state. But I think we're there, right? We just gotta get these checks moving forward, and we're gonna more than meet that goal. So round 1 spend down requirement is almost $1.8 million. Round 2 spend down requirement is just over $416,000 for a total spend down requirement of just over $2.2 million. And we're going to subtract our administrative costs. We'll definitely spend all of our administrative monies from round 1 and 2 by that time for a total of $307,797. We've spent down, as I mentioned earlier, in the waiver program, $259,858.31. And we've approved, and I should say not as of April 22nd, but as of the end of May, we have approved $1,747,436.63 in direct grants. That means that we have more than spent down that 80% once we issue these checks for the direct grants by more than $102,000. That's why the $102,391.33 is in red to show that we are, if we can issue these checks before the 30th of August, we will have more than met our goal in spending down so that we qualify to apply for round 4. All right, how about I hand it over to Paula to talk about eligibility statistics and where we're at with eligibility.
Sure. So we continue to have interest in eligibility, as you can see by the increasing numbers over time. But in January, we had 91 people that were deemed eligible. February, that increased to 121. In March, that increased to 131. There was a big bump up from March to April up to 150. And in May, we are at 167. We are continuing to get applications, as you can see by the row below, and we are continuing to certify people. So please, get your documentation in and we will certify you as quickly as possible. Go ahead. I just wanted to, again, mention to people that, you definitely need to get your eligibility application complete in order to be able to use the eligibility letter so that you can pay whatever delinquent taxes you want to catch up on. So please get those application documents completed so that we can give you your letters.
Great. All right, let's talk about waivers in general, right? We've got a really robust waiver program in place. And so the Mendocino County LEEP waiver program, again, has been expanded, right? We're still doing our best to keep it as simple as possible. LEEP waiver forms are available on the Mendocino Cannabis Department's website under our Forms and Resources page. It actually has its own section. If you scroll down on the Forms and Resources page, it says LEEP waiver forms, right? And then all the forms are there in one section, hopefully really easy We've also been keeping the forms printed in our lobby. So our lobby opens at 8 a.m. and it closes at 5 p.m., but we don't have the counter staffed that whole time. The counter is staffed from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. and staff breaks every day at noon for lunch for an hour. But even if we're at lunch and even if it's before we staff the counter, you can still come in and pick up forms if you need them out of our lobby. Say you're here and you go over to PBS and you're like, I want to waive this permit fee. Just walk over, pick up a form. They are available in the lobby as well as online. So on that page, you'll see treasurer, tax collector waiver forms. You'll see Mendocino Cannabis Department fee waiver forms, planning and building service estimate forms for fee waivers. And then we still have the Department of Agriculture scale registration waiver form up, even though that timeline for paying for your scale certs has come and gone. The form is still on the page. Forms should only be submitted when the fee or the tax is due. And it's really important that you use one form per fee or tax. Right now, the waiver program itself is limited to a $15,000 award maximum. We are considering raising that. And a lot of the reasons why we're considering raising that is because we just launched, as of Monday, a new waiver program that allows folks to use the waivers for delinquent taxes. So when we receive a list from the treasurer tax collector telling us that someone is delinquent, we have no idea what those dollar amounts look like. So for us, it's really hard to know ahead of time if a $15,000 threshold is meaningful for this type of allowance. So until we start getting folks coming in and paying for their delinquent taxes, we're gonna have a hard time knowing whether or not a $15,000 limit is really going to be meaningful to our equity eligible applicants here. So let's talk about how you manage these taxes with your waivers. If you want to pay your 2022 quarterly filings, you can do that with waivers if you are certified LEEP eligible. So what you would do to pay quarterly taxes is you would go over to the TTC and you would file your quarterly taxes, and then the TTC will give you that statement saying you filed your taxes to the tune of this much money, right? And you owe X taxes on that filing. And then you bring that statement from the TTC over to the cannabis department, or you can email it to the cannabis department along with the completed TTC tax waiver form. Again, you can find that online or in our lobby, and your LEEP eligibility certification letter. We need all three of those items in order to process a waiver for your quarterly taxes, okay? Now, the new part of this program, as I mentioned previously, is that we can now use waivers to cover delinquent taxes. However, in order for a waiver to be used for delinquent taxes, the LEEP certified applicant must first go to the treasurer tax collector's office and pay all penalties and interest associated with the delinquency. We cannot use LEEP waivers for any penalties or interest. So in order to be eligible to use a waiver for delinquent taxes, you have to be LEEP certified and you have to pay all interest and penalties associated with the delinquency. When you go to the TTC to pay your interest and penalties, the TTC will give you a statement showing that now only the delinquent taxes are due. And then you can bring that statement to the cannabis department or email it to us along with your completed TTC tax waiver form and your LEEP eligibility certification letter. It's really that simple, and I wish we could pay interest and penalties, but that is a big fat no-no. So, and I just want to be clear, you can pay 2018 delinquent taxes, 2019 delinquent taxes, 2020 delinquent taxes, and or 2021 delinquent taxes. This is not a limited program. You can pay any and all of your delinquent taxes, your local cannabis delinquent business taxes. Just you have to pay the interest and the penalties first. And so we're excited to offer this. And if we start having folks bump up against that $15,000 threshold, we will raise that threshold. We're talking about $25,000, but really until we start seeing what these bills look like from the Treasurer Tax Collector's Office, it's really hard for us to know what an appropriate threshold might be now that we've added this program. We are asking if you email your paperwork in to email it to the cannabis program at mendocinocounty.org. And please do CC Paula at elevateimpactmendo.com so she's got her eyes on how this program is moving forward and who's waiving what. It's greatly appreciated. MCD waiver form, pretty simple, again, online. The MCD waiver form has all of the different fees that you can waive at the department using your LEEP waiver opportunity. So we're asking one fee per form. And please, you can only submit the forms at the time the fee is due. We get a lot of questions, for example, about Appendix G fees. Well, I turned in my Appendix G and you accepted it, but you haven't assigned it, so can I pay for my Appendix G? So with Appendix G specifically, when we assign an Appendix G to a planner for review, we will let you know that it's time to come in and pay for that Appendix G. And then you'll have the opportunity to say, well, I want to use the waiver, and we'll say, great, we'll work with you to get that waiver together. But we aren't doing prepayment in any instances with the waiver program. So just like any of the other, like the tax waiver, when it's time for you to pay an MCD fee, you're going to submit the MCD waiver either to the department in person or by emailing it to the cannabis program at mendocinocounty.org, CCing Paula, and you're going to include your LEEP eligibility certification letter in those materials so we can process this for you. And for some reason, I forgot to put PBS in here. Gosh darn it. All right, let's talk about PBS, and I will make a note to make a PBS slide next time. I'm so sorry. I think I did this last time too. PBS waivers are slightly different than our other waivers. So PBS fees, planning and building fees, are really based on the type of building you're permitting and the size of that building. So while there's set fees for things like an administrative permit, which yes, you could use a waiver for if it's for your cannabis project, and set fees, say for a minor use or a major use permit, there are not set fees that we can just look up for your buildings, okay? So first thing you want to do is you want to fill out a PBS estimate form. That PBS estimate form is, again, it's on the cannabis program website in the forms section, the forms and resources page, and you scroll down to where it says LEEP waivers, and you'll see PBS estimate form. You're going to fill one of those out for each estimate request you have. If you have 7 hoop houses and they're all the same size, you're going to fill out one of those forms for each and every hoop house you have, right? Even though they're all the same size. You can't say 7 at 1,000 square feet, egg exempt, blah, blah, blah. It's one structure per form. Lots of folks have asked us about how to manage reinstatement fees if something has expired, or how to manage a demo fee. Both demo fees and reinstatement fees are eligible for PBS waivers or LEEP waivers through Planning and Building Services. You may have to just add some information onto that form, clarifying what it is you're asking for. But again, one form per reinstatement fee you're looking for, one form per demo you might be trying to get waived, right? One form per building. And then you're going to mail those, you're going to email those and or bring them to the counter of PBS, your estimate forms, and you're going to drop them off or just email them in. It does take PBS a little bit of time to go through those forms and put the dollar amounts in them. Once they put the dollar amounts in them and they approve them, they send materials back to the cannabis department showing us, you know, what the dollar amount is for each and every permit that you've asked for through that estimate form. And then that gives us the information to go ahead and process your waiver. So it does generally take a couple of weeks between the time that you drop off that estimate form with Planning and Building Services for us to get it back and process it. Once we process it, we do the journal entry, we transfer the monies over to Planning and Building Services, and then Planning and Building Services literally has to go in and pay for your fee, right? Your planning and building fee or your reinstatement or your demo fee, whatever it might be. And when they do that, they'll send you a notice saying, thank you so much, your building permit's been reinstated, or you have successfully paid for your application for your hoop house, or whatever it may be. So there's not a lot we can do to streamline that process because it just has more components to it than our other waiver programs. But that is how you work with the planning and building waiver program. So cannabis department fees, again, all of the fees that are eligible for waiving are on the MCD waiver form. So if you have any questions about a fee that might be coming up for you and whether or not you can waive it using your LEEP waiver program, just open the form on the website and we'll show you everything that's eligible. Planning and Building Services, any ag exempt permits that are associated with your cannabis project, any commercial building or greenhouse permits associated with your cannabis project, grading permits such as for your ponds, or if you have lake and streambed alteration agreement projects that require grading permits. All of these are examples of waivers or PBS fees that you can waive using the LEEP waiver program. We do not have a form available for Department of Environmental Health, but we are totally able to work with you to waive cannabis project related environmental health fees. So just let us know if they're coming up for you. So you're putting in a well for cannabis irrigation, you have to go to environmental health to get a well permit. That is an eligible fee for the waiver program, for example. You have employees and you need to put in an ADA restroom and a new commercial septic system. The septic permit for a commercial ADA restroom is another example of a fee that you could waive using the waiver program. Currently, and I know folks are really a little anxious about this, we are not accepting waivers for Class K permits of any type. We're not accepting waivers or issuing waivers for residential structures currently. We are not issuing waivers for grading permits for non-cannabis related flats that have been developed, such as non-cannabis irrigation ponds, right? And we also can't waive any state permitting or licensing fees. The LEEP program can cover your state permitting and licensing fees, but you have to fold that expense into your direct grant budget. And the easiest way to remember this is that we don't have the ability to say transfer funds from our department to a state agency. We can only transfer internally within county agency to county agency, which is what makes us have to kind of break out the waiver program from the direct grant program. So we apologize for that, but it's really just we don't have a mechanism for doing that transfer to cover a state licensing fee or a DFW notification. So that would have to be folded into your direct grant ask. All right, let's talk about the direct grant program, and maybe I can turn this over to Paula to get us going and then turn it back over to William. Paula, you are muted, so you're going to have to start again.
Thank you. So there are 3 separate categories for which you need to prepare documents for the budget. That's the budget Excel spreadsheet, the scope of project, and then you have to submit estimates or quote with meaningful file names for each line item on the budget. So the way it typically works, and maybe for the next presentation, I can have screenshots for you, but you have your budget Excel spreadsheet, and let's say you want to buy rock, and you want to dig a well, and you want to buy a water tank. So each of those has to be identified on your scope of project, explaining what you plan to do and why you need those particular items. And then, so item 1 is buy rock. So then invoice 1 should be your rock invoice. And then line item 1 on the budget should be rock. It should say the amount that you plan to pay. If you plan to pay just a portion of the invoice with the grant, you would have the portion of the invoice that you want to pay with the grant. And then the applicant contribution column would be the portion of the invoice you plan to pay out of pocket. And then the third column is the total invoice amount. Line item 2, you would label invoice 2. You would put water tank as line item 2. On your scope of project, you would say item 2 is a water tank, and you would explain why you need the water tank. And then invoice 2 would be clearly marked invoice 2. Invoice 3, you wanted to dig a well. You would show the invoice as invoice 3 for the well. On your scope of project, you would explain why you need the well. And then on the budget spreadsheet, line item 3, it would give the well amount. All of those 3 things have to line up in order for us to submit your budget. I hope that was helpful.
William, you want to go through this timeline, or you want me to take a crack at it?
Well, I could handle it. Let's see here. So hopefully I can handle it, right? So the direct grant processing timeline, it's between 13 to 18 weeks. Obviously, underwriting, a lot of what Paula just described, is a 4 to 6 week process. It can be more than that. It can be less than that, but that seems to be the average that we would like to make a commitment to. And so the direct grant application is submitted via, Elevate Impact Mendocino. Paula's team reviews it, and then it moves into grant approval. And so grant approval is 3 to 4 weeks. We have weekly approval meetings. Kristen and Paula meet weekly, sometimes multiple times weekly. And so they review the budget, the scope of work, and estimates. Elevate, Paula will take any questions back to the applicant, and we reschedule for a future approval meeting. That's kind of a misnomer. We have them constantly scheduled, so we don't need to reschedule. Upon MCD approval, Elevate formats the agreement. So Paula puts it all into a format that County Council can digest and meets with the awardee to review the agreement and sends the agreement forward to us for contract processing. And so once our department gets it, we receive the grant agreement from Elevate, we review the agreement. I have to put in some budgetary stuff, some line item stuff, some coding stuff to get it through our financial system. And we upload it in a Cobblestone contract for the 7 different county departments to review and sign. So the grant agreement circulates through 7 different county departments for review and signature. Those departments sometimes sound kind of duplicative because I know one of them is the Executive Office Fiscal and then the Executive Office Quality Assurance. They're just different units within the Executive Office. And so after the county signatures are gathered, the awardee will be asked to sign the agreement. Before going into check processing, I just want to talk about the contract processing section really quick. So between the bullets, the grant agreement circulating the 7 different, between us getting it and it going into the Cobblestone platform, I know there's a lot of desire to streamline this. And so we have streamlined it as much as possible. There is absolutely no way within California state law that we can have it reviewed by less people than we currently have it reviewed by. And I wish that we could actually streamline it even more. Unfortunately, we have to operate within the bounds of the law because it's state-given funds. And so when we move into check processing, that can take an additional 3 to 4 weeks. This is why we have you fill out your W-9s as soon as possible to try and make sure that it's only 3 weeks. So after the awardee signs the agreement, it's uploaded into the Cobblestone platform and routed through the auditor's office for review and check processing, and a check processing account is created. And so that would be the vendor account that we need the W-9 for. And so the MCD processes the amount award through the weekly AP batch submission to the auditor's office. And exactly 1 week after that batch, a check is placed in the mail. So yes, 7 to 10 days after AP submittal, and that would be 7 to 10 business days. So. And Kristen, I think you'd like to cover this.
Sure, I'm happy to. So, as many of you are aware, right, and I mentioned earlier, we've only been able to issue 5 checks. So in April, County Council flagged the direct grant portion of the LEEP program based on concerns that had been expressed to County Council by a number of board members and the executive office and probably other folks in the county system about what would be the responsibility of the county if an applicant were to, or an awardee was to misuse the funds that we had provided them. And so we did reach out to GoBiz for some guidance on this issue, and they did provide guidance. And so the guidance is included here in the presentation, and we've just copied and pasted it word from that guidance information that we received into the presentation. So local jurisdictions are responsible for enacting policies and procedures to ensure state grant funds are used appropriately by equity applicants and licensees, including it's our responsibility to inform equity applicants and licensees of eligible uses of the state grant funds. We're responsible for periodically collecting and reviewing documentation from equity applicants and licensees, and for requiring them to preserve and retain documents for a reasonable period of time for audit purposes. In the case that an applicant or an awardee misuses funds, the local jurisdiction is responsible for attempting to recover any misspent funds in a manner similar to how the local jurisdiction would attempt to collect other debts owed to it based on analysis of the circumstances, the size of the debt, and the potential for recovering those funds. Additionally, local jurisdictions are responsible for informing GoBiz when the local jurisdiction becomes aware that funds have been misspent and when it has either collected the funds or deemed them unrecoverable. If funds are misspent and not repaid by the equity applicant or the licensee, we're responsible for withholding further state grant funding to that equity applicant or licensee that misused and or failed to repay the state grant funds. Local jurisdictions that follow all of this guidance will not be required to repay the misspent funds to GoBiz. And I think this is really important, right? So jurisdictions that follow all of this guidance are not responsible to repay misspent funds. Local jurisdictions that don't follow this guidance, right, and fold it into their program and their agreements are responsible for repaying misused funds, and that comes out of the general fund. So this is really where the concern lies with County Council, is really making sure that we have documented proof, right, written into our policy manual, written into our agreements, written into our review practices that ensures that we're checking off all of these boxes so that, heaven forbid, there's a misuse of funds, right? We don't find ourselves as a local jurisdiction in the position of having to pay those funds back to the state through our general fund, right? And so currently, County Council has been reviewing the policy manual, which is on the website. They've been reviewing our review practices, and I know folks are really frustrated with the rigorous nature of our reviews. But again, we really have to meet these requirements in order to ensure that we are meeting this guidance. And then they're also, we sent over kind of a diverse group of grants that everybody was in Cobblestone already. So we just sent those over to County Council to work with outside counsel to ensure that we are meeting all of this guidance so that we can proceed with issuing checks. Had a lot of folks email and say, oh my gosh, am I going to have to reapply? When can I reapply? You know, what do I do? We aren't going to ask folks to reapply. I can tell you that much right now. So the applications that you have with us that we've approved are what we're going to work moving forward, right? And so if County Council comes back and says, we need to ask for additional information or a timeline for these projects, or, you know, ask the applicant to sign an additional form, whatever it may be, we'll work with our approved and everyone who's in our grant review queue to make sure that we fold those extra requirements, if there are any, into the agreement or the grant application that you've already submitted that we may or may not have approved yet. We aren't going to ask you to start back at the beginning. I can tell you that much for sure. I did hear from County Council this week. They did get some materials back from outside counsel and they're reviewing them. We'll be talking about those on Friday. It is likely though that any changes that may be needed, right, to meet this guidance will need to come before the board. So we aren't going to see checks be issued overnight. So just because I'm meeting with County Council on Friday, I just want to temper expectations. It's not going to break the logjam by Monday, okay? But we are having progress, and that's really what I wanted to relay to folks is that we are moving things forward, and County Council is prioritizing this, and they did seek support of outside counsel so that this could move in a timely fashion. And so we sincerely apologize for the pause on it. I think we're really close to lifting that pause, and we will continue to communicate with all of our direct grant applicants and those who have been approved. As soon as we know more information, we will make sure we get that to all of you. Okay. Any additional information our panelists would like to provide before we go to Q&A? Paula, William, anything we missed or forgot that you want to make sure we update folks about?
I just want to encourage people to continue to work on their budgets. It is a time-consuming process, and while we wait for County Council to finish their process that they are going through, don't wait to the last minute to start doing your budget, because once we get the okay from County Council, we want people to be as close to the finish line as possible. And again, this is a time-consuming process, so I highly encourage you to reach out to either me or to Stacy. If you haven't heard from us, it's because there is a big backlog, and I apologize for that. But please don't hesitate to call us. Email us is better, and just ask for an update. And the other thing is, Kristen has been providing feedback on the budgets that have been submitted, and some people I don't hear from. And so, don't shoot yourselves in the foot by waiting until after County Council has raised the go gun. That's a track reference if you're wondering. But anyway, so, but really, work on your budgets, get feedback from myself and from Stacy. I am submitting budgets to Kristen. She is providing detailed feedback on how to improve your budget. All of that, you guys, takes at least a couple of weeks, if not 3 or 4. So please get started. And if we have sent you back feedback, please try to be as responsive as possible. And again, if you haven't heard from us, do not hesitate to email us and ask for an update. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Paula. Really appreciate it. So let's, there's 3 questions open in the Q&A. So let's hit those first. The first question is, do we have to spend down all of round 1 before we can start spending rounds 2 and round 3? And the answer to that is yes. I mean, you spend down round 1, you start dipping into round 2, and then you start dipping into round 3. And really, it's a seamless process from the awardees' point of view. It's really how we report back to the state. So in our quarterly reporting, we'll show, the spend down of round 1. And if we've spent down all of round 1, we'll also report to the state that we're now drawing from round 2. And if we had spent down all of round 2, we would then start showing in that quarterly report that we're drawing out of round 3. So it's pretty seamless, and really how this works is more in of an internal reporting scenario than what any awardees that we're going to be aware of, so to speak. William, you want to add anything to that? I know you're the report master. So
yeah, and so I really appreciate this question, just because it is a little bit convoluted with the way that the state allocated the funding, and especially with the way COVID hit us and the way that they gave us an amendment to keep spending round 1. And so, like I said at the outset, we're in a hybrid round 1, 2, 3 situation right now where technically we can access all 3 rounds of funding, but in order to maintain financial fiduciary responsibility to our taxpayers and to the applicants as well, we want to report it to the state in a chronological manner. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that we can't spend money out of round 2 if it's expounded from round 1's funding for the essentially 5 pots they set up. And so the best way to think about that is, they gave us $700,000 for round 1 and regulatory fees, which is part of the waiver system. And so if we wiped through that $700,000, we can move right into round 2, even if we still have round 1 money in, let's say, capital improvement fees. And so it's a little bit convoluted. And like Kristen said, applicants won't even know that it's happening when it happens, when we transition into new rounds. But rest assured, we do have tons of funding that we can access all right now and moving into the future. And also, we're doing it this way intentionally to ensure that we have a round 4.
Yes. And I know folks are like, well, if you have a lot of grants stacking up, are you going to run out of equity money? But remember, the Local Jurisdiction Assistance Grant Program also has a direct grant program that is really meant to prioritize equity eligible individuals. So say we have a lot of capital improvements is a really good example that comes through these direct grant applications. So if we suddenly spent, or it looked like we were getting close to spending capital improvement funds for rounds 1, 2, and 3, we can start drawing from that LJAGP direct grant pool for any capital improvement that's included in our application, our approved application for LJAGP funds. So while we have, I think it's a little over 3 million, right, for direct grants in the LEEP pool or pot of monies, we do have this fluid ability to say, holy cow, we've already spent down all 3 rounds of capital improvements, and William has a, $30,000 fish and wildlife project that he wants funded. We could take that $30,000 out of LJAGP if we needed to, right? Or we wanted to, because we started seeing that, we're spending down rapidly funds to help folks with delinquent taxes. So delinquent taxes and a lot of the waiver program that we run, not eligible for LJAGP funding. So we're watching these pools of money, and we're always thinking about at what point should we throw this breaker, so to speak, and start funding some of these grant agreements that are also eligible under LJAGP. So we have a lot of direct grant funds to work with here to assist equity applicants, not just what's in that LEEP pool, okay? So I just want to make sure that folks are aware of that. Another question we have, why is County Council being so slow, and would you please provide a detailed answer? So I'm going to do my best to answer this, and I don't want to speak on behalf of another department, but I will say we are not the only department who has a ton of needs from county council. And we might be one of the more robust departments with needs as far as, we're going through some implementation. We've got these grant programs, but we share counsel between multiple departments here in the county. So the cannabis program does not have, while we have dedicated counsel for our needs, we still share that dedicated counsel with other departments. So they're really doing their best to manage their workload. But they also are not just helping with policy development and direct grant development. They're also who helps manage the public records requests that come in, right? Any sort of legal issue, lawsuit that the county is dealing with. So they are pretty booked constantly, and often working overtime to try to meet the needs of the departments that they serve. And this is why county council, and I'm very appreciative of this is why they turn to our outside counsel for support on this. And they often do that. And I don't always know that they do that, because with outside counsel, the department, the MCD, we don't have direct access to outside counsel, right? When we have something that the department needs, we go to county council, and county council says, oh, this would be a great job for outside counsel. And they then manage outside counsel. We interact with outside counsel as they're processing through the needs of the department. So again, we'll be having a conversation with county council and outside counsel on Friday of this week about the LEEP program specifically and moving these direct grants forward. But it is going to take us a little time, I think, to work through whatever proposal comes back and get that in front of the board to make sure that we can proceed. So I think that's about all the details I have on this, and I wish I had more, but soon. And we'll keep you updated, not just in these meetings monthly. We also can provide updates in our Friday meetings. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to kick it over to William. William, did you have something you wanted to add to this, or you just were clearing the question? Okay, no worries, no worries. Let's do one more question before we go to folks who would like to ask questions or make comments verbally. William, please.
I did actually just have something to input into that, and that is that I have been working with county council proactively on the agreements. While they're still reviewing this data, they are working concurrently, and so that they can move seamlessly into approving these once they get the direction. Great.
So I know it's painful. I recognize that folks are really in an economically challenging time, unlike we've seen before. And we're sympathetic to that. We're doing our best to try to get these moving forward. We appreciate your patience. And we just want to get money into your hands as soon as possible, really. And this is a great next question. It falls right in line with what we're talking about. So since we're allowing the payment of taxes in arrears, right? What prevents you from paying for infrastructure and services included in an approved budget but completed prior to the signed contract? The eligibility has been established prior to the budget approval. So we did not argue that these taxes are in arrears. So this is how the delinquent tax conversation came up. We asked months ago if we could cover delinquent taxes. And the response was, no, you can't cover delinquent taxes because they have to be a startup or an ongoing expense. So fast forward to May 17th. May 17th, during the Board of Supervisors meeting on May 17th, the board said, you must prioritize. They directed staff, MCD staff, to prioritize the processing of applications that are associated with folks who are DCC compliant, meaning they have a state license, and or they're working through a pending application with the Department of Cannabis Control, and they're current on their taxes, which means that folks who don't have state licenses and or are delinquent in taxes get deprioritized from our review queue. So William and I argued that being deprioritized from the review queue due to delinquent taxes means that those taxes are now an ongoing expense, because if you can't be processed because you owe taxes, that is a direct business expense that you're facing today in order to get your business moving forward and keep it operational. And the state said, well, when you put it that way, we can say yes. And so this is really what changed that allowed us to offer delinquent taxes, was that directive from the Board of Supervisors on May 17th that told us we couldn't process or prioritize the processing of any application when the applicant has delinquent taxes. So we made a solid argument to GoBiz that we want them to consider delinquent taxes an ongoing expense, since no one can do business if their taxes are delinquent, right? Because you can't get a renewal processed, you can't get your application processed, you can't get a modification process. So this is how we were able to classify delinquent taxes as an ongoing expense. But again, it really is about startup and ongoing expenses. So if you've already paid for infrastructure, it's not a startup or an ongoing expense according to the way the state sees it. And so I know it's a little confusing, but you know, it's really where we're at. And I'm fortunate, I think we're all fortunate, and I'm appreciative that the state agreed with us that now that you can't have an application process without paying those taxes, that it should be considered an ongoing expense for businesses. Paula.
Just another nuance to what you're saying. I have a question, and that is, it has been stated that the state will not allow for the reimbursement of expenses. So an unpaid delinquent tax has still not been paid.
Right.
And so it is not a reimbursement.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
That's a great way to frame it, Paula. I really appreciate that. It's much simpler and cleaner than my rambling explanation. So thank you so much for that.
Sure.
Okay, so I just want to remind folks that you can ask questions verbally if you want to. And in order to do so, we're asking that you raise your hand. You can raise your hand by finding the raise hand feature. If you're on the Zoom platform, it should be in your toolbar, generally located at the bottom or the top of your screen. If you just click the hand icon, it will raise your hand, and we'll be able to call on you to ask your question. We do have Paul Hansberry followed by Susan Tibbin in the queue. If you are not on a Zoom application and you dialed into the meeting, you can raise your hand by pressing *9. So I am going to put the timer up just because it's good practice. So let me do that. Sometimes what happens is we get into questions and then folks are like, oh gosh, now I want to ask a question too. So I want to make sure that we're mindful about our time. And if we have more time, we'll just come back to folks who might not get their full question in a 2-minute period. So, and you can still use the Q&A feature as we're working through questions that folks are going to ask verbally. So we're going to go to our first caller, which is Paul Hansberry, and he will be followed by Susan Tibbin. So Paul, you should be able to unmute your device and start your comment or your question.
Yeah, thanks you, Kristen. I mean, you've known me for a long time. I'm going to try to be as polite as I know how to be and try not to sound like a jerk. But it sounds like the state is jumping over jumping through all kinds of hoops and, like, as you put it, oh, since you put it that way, yeah, we can do that. They're finding solutions for the county to get the money, for the county to get their taxes, for the county to get the fees with the waivers, that the county is getting the money, and they're not being creative at all. They're being more obstructionist in putting more obstacles in front of the people to get the checks into the hands of the recipients, which is who the grant process is for. The last question that you answered about the taxes, but the question was really about, what about, because of the delays, I had to go and do these capital improvements. They were on my budget, but it wasn't granted. I didn't get the money for it, and I had to pay for it out of my pocket. So why can't I just take that when I finally do get my check? It's not their fault that they're not getting the check. So then it would be considered a reimbursement. It's been stated that it was a reimbursement, that they wouldn't pay for reimbursement, but that's not actually true. That's part of the local jurisdictions saying that they won't pay reimbursements. Other jurisdictions do pay reimbursements. And for the last item, I've been trying to put up, my budget has still not been uploaded to the website for me to start reporting these the receipts for monies that are spent, and I'm disinclined to try to start doing this if I have to do it all over again after the budget's uploaded. The way that it's laid out now looks like it's going to be very difficult to determine which line item is the receipt is going to, just because of the choices for the characterizations of the line items. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Paul. I'm going to go ahead and answer some of your questions, and then I'll kick the receipt reconciliation questions over to Paula because she's better suited to answer those questions. So reimbursement, the program does not allow reimbursements. It only allows ongoing and startup expenses. So no local jurisdiction should be issuing grant monies for an F1 structure that you built in 2018, right? You built it, you paid for it, and you cannot be reimbursed for the cost of building that structure. If you already did your lake and streambed alteration agreement projects and you paid for your culverts and to rip wrap, your outlets and to put in your rolling dips, whatever it may be, if you paid for that, you cannot apply for and be granted equity funds to reimburse you for the expenses for that LSAA project or projects that you conducted last summer. That's not how this program works. Now, if you have a budget and an agreement that you have that's made it all the way through our approval system and it's signed, right, by all parties, the county and the applicant, and you need to start getting those projects moving forward, you can start funding those projects that are approved in that budget. Again, only once that agreement is signed by all parties. It must be fully executed, right? So once you've fully executed that agreement, if you're like, holy crap, 3 to 6 weeks, I need a contractor here tomorrow because my work season is ending, right? You can go ahead and start funding those projects that are associated with a fully executed agreement while you're waiting for that check to show up. There's nothing wrong with that. But we cannot approve the reimbursement of projects or expenses that you have already completed and paid for, right? So I hope that that really helps clarify it.
Well, no. Actually, it doesn't, because if it's not our fault that the seasons are going along and the program is being delayed.
I understand that, and I'm gonna just mute you again. There's, regardless of whose fault it is, Paul, and I apologize that it's painful and it's challenging, we still can't break the rules in this program, or we get into a position where we're no longer eligible to receive funds to keep this program going. So I I'm sympathetic, and I know that the delays are creating some hardship and some trying times, but we cannot run a reimbursement program. It is forbidden. It's not allowed because of statute. So I think what we need to do here is go to our next caller. If you want to raise your hand again, you can, Paul. And before we go to the next caller, I'm going to give Paula an opportunity to, respond to the other portions of your question.
Right. So, Paul, you can actually input the budget yourself. The budget hasn't been pre-populated, but there is a way to input the budget yourself. And Stacy can help you do that. We just need to have a training session with Stacy to do that. And I think there was some confusion about that, but the expense app is working, and you can upload your budget and also upload your receipts. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And really quick, question came up about the direct grant amount being increased. In September, the direct grant amount will be increased to $80,000. So this round right now, as we work through spending down all of round one and probably dipping into round two significantly between now and the end of August, the grant threshold is at $50,000. But as of September 1st, folks will be eligible to apply for direct grants of up to $80,000. And folks who have applied for and been awarded the $50,000 threshold are eligible to apply for an additional $30,000 in grant awards. Okay, our next caller is Susan Tibbin. She'll be followed by Tom Perry. Susan, you should be able to go ahead and unmute your device and make your comment or leave your question. Susan, you're still muted.
Okay, better.
Now we got you.
Thank you, Kristen.
Susan, you're a little echoey. Can you turn off or mute whatever volume you have on your laptop?
How's that?
Your phone?
Better?
Yeah, that's much better. Thank you. I'm going to restart your timer.
No, I can't hear them. I'm just going to yield my time. We have a technical problem here. Thanks anyway.
All right. And if you want to type it into the chat, I'll try to answer it that way, Susan. Okay. Let's see here. Our next caller is going to be Tom Perry, and I don't have anyone in the queue after Tom, but I am going to go ahead and set the timer. Tom, you should be able to go ahead and unmute your device and start your comment or your question.
All right, great. Thank you. I just want to confirm one thing. I've got a two-part question. Did I hear you say, Kristen, that if we've got state cultivation license fees that we can include that in our direct grant budget? That's the first question. And then the second thing, it's more like a comment, and I'm stating the obvious, but I think all of us would really like to get some sort of a timeline that, the county and county council can commit to getting this process unclogged. I mean, a lot of the information that we got today is the same information that we got basically a month ago. Mm-hmm. And, it seems like, okay, county council's working, that's great. They're working overtime, but we're not getting any results. And, I appreciate that, you said it's soon, but it seems like that if this were a real priority, if this were a true priority, someone would have figured out a way to get this process accelerated.
All right, I'm going to do my best to respond to both parts of your question. So you did hear correctly that you can put your licensing fees into your direct grant budget. You can also put your water board permitting fees in there, your water monitoring and water reporting fees in there, any lake and stream bed alteration agreement notification fees, all state licensing. Your weighmaster fee could go in there, for example, right? We can't do a waiver for a weighmaster fee because those fees are part of the state Department of Agriculture. It's really weird. Whereas the scale certs are part of the local Department of Agriculture. So we can waive scale certs, but we can't waive weighmaster. But weighmaster fees could be folded into your direct grant budget along with your state licensing fee, your state application fee, any DFW notification fees, any DFW projects, any water board permitting fees. All of those can go into and are eligible for direct grant funding. Timeline for moving this forward, I want a timeline too. I don't none of the staff here is comfortable and thrilled about the fact that we can't give you a timeline. It actually makes us pretty stressed out. So we have been pressing Paula's on that stress train too, unfortunately. And so we have been pressing pressing county council, gently asking the executive office to help us apply that pressure. The executive office has also been helping us apply that pressure. I'm hoping that on Friday we'll have a solid timeline. And I hear you. I think if it, it's hard for me to say that it's a priority when you're right. We prepared and shared a lot of the same information, if not all of the same information on this topic last month. The program itself, County Council hasn't moved forward a review on a grant agreement since April. I don't have any comforting words, and I don't have a timeline. I would love a timeline. I'm certainly hoping that Friday's meeting results in a timeline that we can share with folks next week. But right now, this is where we're at, and it's unfortunate, and I just don't have any additional information available, or I would share it with all of you. So with that said, it looks like Susan has raised her hand again. So let's see if we can get Susan into the queue for comment. Susan Tibbin, you should be able to go ahead and unmute your device.
Are you hearing me now?
We are hearing you now.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kristen. And I understand that everybody's facing some difficulties. What we're hoping is as we move into the fall, we can look at a different paradigm as we move into 2023. And that is that having all of us trying our best and having all of you trying your best to deal with this real mess right in the heart of the season is just unconscionable. If I didn't know better, I would think that this was not, omission, this was commission. That by making it impossible for small entities to deal with the system that's really pretty broken and
Oh, Susan, you broke up. Oh, we lost you. Gosh darn it. I'll say this while we wait for Susan to reconnect. We got 5 more minutes in the meeting. I'm looking forward to a new paradigm as well, right? And I think Paula is and all of our staff is, right? I'm really quite confident that once we get over this hurdle, we'll know exactly what we need to expedite this direct grant program and the direct grant program for the LJAGP, right? This is going to be a lot of the same sort of, I mean, it's going to be identical, to be honest with you, as far as like the policies and the expectations of county council. So I think once we can move past this barrier that we're dealing with right now, and we have all of the information so that our review practices are up to snuff, right? The grant agreements are up to snuff. The requirements that the materials that we're asking for are up to snuff with meeting the guidance from the state. I think that's going to be the same sort of information we need to really make sure that we can move in a seamless manner for not just the equity program, but for the issuance of direct grants into the LJAGP. And again, it's been kind of fast and furious getting this program set up and stood up. And there was a ton of pressure from the Board of Supervisors to get checks out. And then all this concern came up from the Board of Supervisors as soon as we started getting the checks out. And then we got paused to try to get more criteria in place or make sure that we're meeting all the requirements from the state. And none of us love the way it's unfolded. But I do have confidence that once we get past this moment in time and we know exactly what the expectations are of the department for the reviews and the applicants for the agreements, I don't think we're going to find ourselves back in this place again, right? I think this is like icing the cake, right? And it's kind of like, no, you cannot have a piece of cake until the frosting's on it. And so that's not an awesome analogy, but unfortunately it's where we're at right now. And I think county council is almost done mixing the frosting so we can smear it on the cake and we can all move forward with this program. William, I'm thinking that maybe you wanted to comment on this too.
I did have a comment, and I might bring this comment back to our Friday meetings as well. And I hear a lot from our community, the need for us to streamline things, the need for us to have a paradigm change, the need for us to alter things. And then vice versa, I also hear from our community a lot that other jurisdictions might be doing it better. I'm just going to say this. If someone's doing better than me and Kristen, send us an example. Send us a concrete example. I would love to see it. I come to this from science background, so methodology is my thing. I like being wrong if my being wrong makes the system better. What I don't like to hear, though, is streamlining. If you tell me to run faster, I don't know how to do that. If you show me how to run faster, I will run faster. So that's just the piece that I wanted to throw in there, because so often I hear that the department needs to improve. We absolutely can, and we'd absolutely love to, but we need concrete examples of how to do this.
And with those examples, we are more than happy to reach out to other local jurisdictions and figure out how they manage to do things in that way that is so much better, right? So we do meet pretty regularly with other local jurisdictions who have equity programs. We're not the only local jurisdiction that shares these concerns about what happens around the misuse of funds. It's not an easy conversation. It's not an easy solution. And ultimately, equity programs in all of these local jurisdictions are new to the local jurisdictions. I think LA and Oakland might be the two oldest programs in the state. And I think Paula can attest to working in both of those jurisdictions. There is a lot of bumps and bruises that happen to getting these checks out the door for the first time in those jurisdictions. And this is kind of what we hear repeatedly from local jurisdictions. I know Humboldt had a heck of a time getting checks out for the first time. So we're really working on it, and I do sincerely apologize for the delays. Are other counties using Cobblestone? Maybe and maybe not. I don't know what their platform is, but they all have to do the same sort of internal review, right? There is state statute that requires really robust checks and balances for local jurisdictions, especially when they're passing state money through to the public. So we can't sidestep those statutory requirements, which is what William referenced earlier. And I'm going to pass the microphone back to William, or the floor back to William.
So Cobblestone, I'm really concerned that the people on this call and the people in our populace view Cobblestone as the boogeyman. It is not the boogeyman. It's not out to get us. It's the same thing as Municode. It's the same thing as Munis. It's the same thing as any civic platform or application. Cobblestone is used by many jurisdictions, both states, counties, cities, both, all three. And it's simply a tool. Nina on the call here can attest to or remember the times when we used to issue contracts and it required 4 wet signatures. Cobblestone got past that problem. Cobblestone is designed to work within our purchasing agent rules and laws, and we cannot streamline it any faster. So streamlining, are other counties using Cobblestone for equity grants? I don't know, but I guarantee you they're using something similar.
Yeah. And an electronic or automated system such as Cobblestone is much quicker than William and I hand walking a contract or agreement from department to department, person to person, and then pestering that person to pick it up off of the corner of their desk and move it forward. So it is the tool used for streamlining. So it is 5:02 and we do need to adjourn because I need to send staff home. They've been here for a long time. I think Nina's been here since 7. So I want to thank everyone for joining us. We will do a report out on our Friday meeting, just providing an update, not this Friday, because I'm not talking to County Council until after this Friday's meeting. So you can expect an update on equity on July 1st. So thank you, everyone. We do really appreciate you joining us today and participating in these meetings. And we hope you all have a fabulous remainder to your week, a wonderful weekend. And we'll talk to some of you during the Friday meeting. Thanks.
Bye-bye.